was a bright, warm morning when the sisters decided to go for a run. The sun was barely up, casting golden light across the quiet streets of their neighborhood. Birds chirped softly from the trees, and the smell of fresh grass filled the air. The two sisters, who were close in age and even closer in spirit, had a routine of running together almost every morning. They loved the freedom it gave them, the way it made their hearts pound, and the way it let them talk about everything that mattered in life without anyone interrupting. Their parents had just finished breakfast in the kitchen. The table was still warm from the toast and eggs they had eaten moments before. The sisters laughed and joked as they tied their shoelaces, making playful bets about who could run faster. It was normal. It was routine. Nothing seemed out of place. "Don't go too far," their mother called from the doorway, watching them tie their laces with a mix of pride and concern. "We'll be back soon," the older sister replied with a smile. "Promise." With that, they ran off down the quiet street, their hair bouncing in the morning sun. The rhythm of their feet hitting the pavement was almost hypnotic, and for a moment it seemed like nothing could ever go wrong. They turned the corner and disappeared from sight, heading toward the trail near the woods that bordered the neighborhood. It was a place they loved, a little wild, a little secret, and always full of adventure. The first hour passed without worry. The sisters loved exploring the trail, making jokes and pointing out small animals they saw along the way. They laughed as they tried to race each other, their voices echoing slightly among the trees. Birds scattered as they ran, and the wind rustled the leaves. Everything seemed perfect. But when the sisters didn't return after a couple of hours, a feeling of unease started to settle over the family. At first it was small, a thought that maybe they had stopped somewhere for water or had gotten distracted. But as more time passed, that unease turned into panic. The parents tried calling their phones, but there was no answer. Texts went unread. By the evening, the family knew something was seriously wrong. They contacted the police and began searching the streets, calling neighbors, and hoping someone had seen the girls. The neighborhood was small, tight-knit, and usually very safe. People knew each other, and news like this traveled fast. Everyone was shocked. How could two sisters disappear like this without a trace? Search parties formed quickly. Volunteers combed through the woods, checking every path, every hidden corner, every stream. The family handed out flyers with the sisters' pictures, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Local media picked up the story, reporting on the mysterious disappearance. Days passed, then weeks, and still there was no clue. Every possible lead seemed to dry up, leaving the family desperate and confused. The parents spent sleepless nights awake, hoping for any sign of their daughters. They returned to the trail, walking every inch, calling their names into the silence of the forest. Friends and relatives offered support, bringing meals and staying nearby, but nothing could ease the ache of uncertainty. Each passing day felt heavier than the last. Meanwhile, the community was buzzing with speculation. People whispered about what might have happened: kidnapping, accident, runaway. Some mentioned strange sightings near the woods in the days leading up to the disappearance. Others spoke of mysterious cars parked along quiet streets or people seen watching the neighborhood too closely. But no concrete evidence ever surfaced. Everything was speculation. The sisters' room remained untouched for a long time, filled with reminders of who they were. Books left open on desks, drawings pinned on walls, running shoes neatly placed by the door. Their laughter seemed to echo in the house even when it was silent. Every small thing reminded the family of what they had lost, and every day without answers was a fresh wound. Police investigations continued, but the case grew colder with time. Leads came in only to disappear again. A neighbor thought they saw someone near the trail, but when the police checked, there was nothing. A local business claimed a customer mentioned seeing the girls at a distant town, but it was never confirmed. Slowly, hope began to fade, though the family refused to give up entirely. Years went by. The family adjusted as best as they could to a life without the sisters. The parents found ways to cope, though grief was never far from their hearts. They kept the girls' rooms just as they were, keeping memories alive in small ways. Birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays were painful reminders of what they had lost. Friends and neighbors often brought meals or flowers, offering small comforts, but the absence of the sisters was always felt. Even with the pain, life went on. The family celebrated small victories, graduations, birthdays, personal milestones. yet always with a quiet ache. Sometimes, late at night, one of the parents would sit by the window, staring out into the darkness, hoping to see their daughter's familiar faces, hoping for a miracle. The sister's disappearance became a shadow that lingered, a silent reminder that life could change in an instant. Despite everything, there were moments of hope. Occasionally, someone would call with information, or a letter would arrive with clues about where the girls might be. Each time, the family felt a surge of excitement, only to face disappointment when the leads went nowhere. But they kept trying, kept searching, kept believing, because giving up was not an option. The sisters' story became more than just a personal tragedy. It became part of the community's memory. People remembered the girls for their laughter, their energy, and their kindness. The trail in the woods, once a place of joy, became a symbol of mystery and loss. Children who ran there were warned about what happened, and adults often looked at the path with a sense of unease. Through all the years, the family never stopped hoping. They clung to the possibility that one day they would understand what happened. They knew life might never be the same, but the bond they had with the sisters was unbreakable, even across years of silence. Each day was a mix of sorrow and hope, a delicate balance of grief and perseverance. And though the sisters had vanished from sight, their presence lingered in every corner of the family's life, in the quiet mornings, in the laughter of friends, in the small acts of kindness that reminded them of who the girls were. Every memory, every photograph, every story kept the sisters alive in the hearts of those who loved them. This was the life they lived, uncertain, painful, but also full of love and resilience. Every day they remembered, every day they hoped, and though the truth was hidden, they held on to the belief that one day the mystery would be solved, and they would finally find the answers they had been searching for all these years. Days turned into weeks, and the hope of finding the sisters alive started to feel thinner, but the family refused to give up. Every morning, the parents woke up and went through the same routine, checking the phones, looking for messages, calling old friends and neighbors, and visiting the local police station to see if there were any updates. Each day was exhausting, and yet in the background, they carried a quiet determination that refused to fade. The police were thorough, but cautious. At first, they treated the disappearance as a potential runaway case because there was no immediate evidence of foul play. They checked local shelters, hospitals, and even asked neighbors if the girls had shown signs of wanting to leave home. Nothing pointed to them leaving voluntarily. Every lead was followed, and every possible clue was examined, but it was as if the sisters had vanished into thin air. The family felt frustrated with the slow pace of the investigation. They wanted answers now, not months later. The father spent hours sitting in the police station, going over maps of the area, marking the places the sisters loved to run, the trails they often took, and even the small shortcuts that only they knew. Every detail mattered. The mother spent her days making phone calls, talking to neighbors, and coordinating with anyone who could help search. Friends and extended family joined in, covering miles of trails, abandoned buildings, and even nearby towns. Some days brought false hope. A local hiker thought they saw the girls on the outskirts of town, waving at someone. A store clerk claimed that a pair of young women had bought snacks and water from her shop around the time the sisters disappeared. Every tip sparked hope, and the family rushed to follow up, only to find that the leads went nowhere. Each time, the disappointment was crushing. Meanwhile, rumors started circulating in the community. People whispered about strangers seen near the trail, about old abandoned cabins in the woods, and about unusual cars parked late at night. Some stories were wild, others believable. The family struggled to separate fact from fiction, trying desperately to hold on to hope while protecting themselves from the endless speculation. The police decided to dig deeper. They brought in specialists to search the woods using dogs trained to pick up human scents. They checked the nearby rivers and streams, hoping to find any trace of the sisters. They also investigated the people who had lived near the trail, questioning everyone who might have noticed something unusual that day. But the forest was dense and the trail was long. Any trace of the girls seemed to disappear with the wind. At home, the family lived in a state of constant anxiety. Every phone call, every knock on the door made their hearts race. Every time the police called with new leads, there was hope and fear intertwined. The mother sometimes broke down, holding on to the girls' favorite belongings as she cried, whispering their names into the quiet house. The father would sit in silence, staring at the trail maps, imagining every possible scenario, some hopeful, some terrifying. The sisters' friends were also struggling. They remembered the last time they had seen them, the way they laughed, joked, and promised to meet up after the run. Some friends couldn't understand how something so ordinary, so routine, could end in such uncertainty. They talked to the family often, offering memories and support, but no one could replace the sisters' presence. Months passed, and the case became a local mystery. News outlets continued to cover it, but the story started fading from the headlines. Still, the family refused to give up. They hired private investigators, hoping that someone might notice something the police had missed. Flyers were updated with clearer pictures, and the search radius expanded to nearby towns and cities. Each new effort was met with hope, yet disappointment often followed. During this time, the family noticed small, unexplained things. A mailbox left open when it should have been shut. A strange car parked near the trail that disappeared when they approached. Even small noises in the night caused anxiety. Was it someone looking for the girls, or just the imagination running wild under stress? Every detail mattered. Every possibility was explored. The investigation also revealed the complexity of such disappearances. Police explained that it was unusual for two young girls to vanish without leaving a trace. They theorized multiple possibilities: abduction, accidental wandering into danger, or even someone known to them who might have caused harm. Each theory was terrifying, and yet none had solid evidence to support it. In the meantime, the family tried to maintain some semblance of normal life, though everything felt different. The house was quieter, meals were taken in silence, and holidays were filled with a mix of sadness and remembrance. Neighbors occasionally offered support, dropping off food, joining search efforts, or simply sitting with the family so they weren't alone. But the sisters' absence was a constant shadow. The parents also began documenting everything: conversations with police, tips from friends and neighbors, anything that might help if the girls were ever found. The mother wrote detailed notes about what the girls wore that day, the routes they usually took, and the times they typically ran. The father kept a map with pins and markers, hoping that one day, all the small pieces might come together. Years began to pass. Though the active searches slowed, the investigation never fully ended. Police files grew thicker, and the case became classified as cold, meaning no new leads were available. Despite this, the family never stopped hoping. Each new year brought a mix of remembrance and grief, as well as the faint glimmer that maybe, just maybe, the sisters were still alive somewhere. Friends and family suggested moving on, but the parents couldn't. Their lives had changed completely. Every quiet evening, every moment alone reminded them of the missing sisters. Photos were placed on walls, favorite toys kept on shelves, and small items that the sisters loved were carefully preserved. These were small ways to keep their memory alive, ways to survive while holding on to hope. During this time, the family also encountered skeptics. Some people suggested the sisters had run away intentionally, that perhaps they didn't want to be found. These ideas were painful and hard to accept. The family knew their daughters. They were loving, kind, and would never leave without a word. But without evidence, opinions varied, and the family had to guard their hearts against both doubt and gossip. Throughout the investigation, the sisters' story became part of local culture. School children heard about them in whispered stories. Adults often remembered seeing them running on the trail, laughing, full of life. Their disappearance became a reminder of how fragile life could be, how quickly the familiar could turn uncertain. Even as the investigation slowed, the family held small rituals to remember the sisters. They visited the trail, bringing flowers and notes. They gathered with friends and neighbors to share memories and hope. These moments, though painful, were vital. They reminded everyone that though the sisters were gone, their presence had left a lasting mark. Then, unexpectedly, new attention began to emerge years later. Old tips were revisited, technology had improved, and the police occasionally reopened parts of the case. Every small detail mattered, because after so long, even the tiniest clue could become the key. Through all the years of searching, hoping and fearing the worst, one thing remained constant: the family's unwavering love for the sisters. They had disappeared from sight, but never from hearts, and even in the darkest moments they believed that one day the truth would come. Years had passed since the sisters disappeared, and life had shifted in ways the family could never have imagined. Their house remained the same on the outside, but inside, it felt like a place frozen in time. The rooms of the missing sisters remained untouched, their belongings carefully preserved. The beds were made, shoes lined up by the door, and favorite books stacked neatly on the shelves. Every corner of the house was a reminder of their absence, yet also a testament to the love that refused to fade. The parents had changed. The father had grown quieter over the years, spending long hours in thought. He would often sit in the living room, staring at the trail maps he had kept since the first day, tracing the paths the sisters had loved to run. Sometimes he would whisper their names into the empty room, hoping that somehow they could hear him. The mother, though more visibly emotional, had developed a quiet resilience. She spoke to neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had seen something unusual that day, never letting go of the hope that one day the sisters might return. Life outside the home continued, indifferent to the family's pain. Birthdays, holidays, and small celebrations were bittersweet. Friends and relatives tried to bring joy, but the absence of the sisters was always felt. On each birthday, their chairs remained empty at the table. On holidays, presents meant for them were placed carefully aside, unopened, as if waiting for the day they would come back. Every occasion became a mixture of remembrance and sorrow, a reminder that life had moved forward, but not fully for this family. The siblings who remained struggled in their own way. They grew up without the constant presence of the sisters, learning to adapt while carrying the shadow of loss. School was difficult. Sometimes teachers and classmates would ask questions they could not answer. Friends would share stories about their siblings, and the missing sisters' absence would feel heavier than ever. Yet through this, bonds strengthened. The remaining family members leaned on each other, sharing memories, comforting each other, and finding small ways to survive the ongoing pain. The community remained involved. People remembered the sisters for who they had been, kind, lively, and full of energy. Some neighbors continued to check on the family, bringing meals, helping with household chores, or simply sitting with them in silence, knowing that words could not fix the emptiness. Children who had once run alongside the sisters grew up hearing stories about them. The trail where the sisters had disappeared became both a place of memory and a caution, a symbol of something beautiful lost too soon. Despite the passage of time, small hints of possibility occasionally appeared. Letters arrived from people claiming to have seen something unusual. Phone calls came with tips about strangers near the woods, and once in a while, a sighting was reported in a neighboring town. Each time, hope would flare, only to fade when the leads went nowhere. But the family never stopped believing that one day the truth would emerge. Each small detail, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was treated as a potential key to unlocking the mystery. The parents also turned to community organizations and support groups, seeking comfort and understanding. They met other families who had experienced loss or disappearance, sharing stories, advice, and coping strategies. In these groups, they were reminded that grief is a long journey, one that cannot be rushed. Each meeting brought a mix of pain and reassurance, a recognition that though their sisters were gone, they were not alone in their struggle. Life without the sisters also shaped the family's routines. Morning runs, once shared with laughter and companionship, became quiet walks for remembrance. Meals were eaten in a different way, quieter and more reflective. Even watching television or listening to music reminded them of the sisters' absence, making each activity a mixture of comfort and sorrow. The house felt alive in memory, but in reality, it carried an invisible weight that pressed on every member of the family. The parents found small ways to honor their daughters. They planted flowers along the trail where the sisters had run, each bloom a small symbol of life, hope, and memory. They created photo albums and memory boxes, filling them with drawings, letters, and small items that reminded them of the girls' personalities. Friends and neighbors often joined in these acts of remembrance, creating a network of support that kept the sisters' presence alive, even in their absence. School and friends also became important anchors for the remaining family members. They focused on studies, friendships, and hobbies, finding ways to live life even under the shadow of loss. Yet every moment of joy carried an undertone of sorrow. Achievements were tinged with the thought of the sisters who should have been there to celebrate. Vacations and outings brought memories of what could have been. Every event was a mix of gratitude for the present and longing for what was lost. The parents also struggled with the emotional impact of unanswered questions. Each day was filled with what-ifs and if-onlys. What if they had left the house earlier? What if they had noticed someone following them? What if they had taken a different trail? These questions haunted their minds, yet they never allowed themselves to give in completely. Each day was an act of resilience, a choice to continue living while holding the sisters in their hearts. Community support played a vital role during these years. Neighbors helped with small tasks, friends checked in regularly, and even strangers offered words of encouragement. Sometimes these small gestures were the only thing keeping the family afloat. They realized that though life had changed forever, kindness and solidarity from others helped them survive the uncertainty, giving them the strength to keep going. Even as years turned into decades, the memory of the sisters remained vivid. Their favorite books, toys, and clothes were preserved meticulously. Photos captured their smiles and laughter, frozen in time. The family created a small corner in the house dedicated entirely to them. A quiet, safe space where memories could be cherished, where love could remain alive despite the absence, despite everything. Hope never fully died. The family clung to the possibility that one day the mystery would be solved. They imagined the sisters returning, perhaps older and changed, and tried to prepare themselves emotionally for that day. Every tip, every sighting, and every clue, no matter how small, became a source of renewed optimism. Each instance reminded them that, although life had been altered, it was not over, and the truth might still be waiting to be discovered. The sisters' disappearance also had a lasting effect on the family's sense of time. Days, months, and years all seemed to blend together, marked not by ordinary milestones but by memories of the girls and the search for answers. The family learned to live in a delicate balance between grief and hope, sorrow and resilience. Every year they marked the anniversary of the disappearance quietly, lighting candles, placing flowers, and remembering the laughter that once filled the house. In the quiet moments, the parents sometimes talked about what life had been like before the disappearance, sharing stories of ordinary mornings, school events, and small adventures. They recalled the laughter, the arguments, the shared secrets, and the bonds that had seemed so ordinary at the time, but now were cherished memories of a life interrupted. These conversations, though painful, were also comforting, a way to keep the sisters alive in memory and heart. Through all these years, the family learned the power of resilience. They discovered that love does not disappear with absence, that memory can be a source of strength, and that even in the darkest times, hope can survive. They learned to carry grief alongside daily life, to embrace the small joys that remained, and to honor the sisters through acts of remembrance and love. And though life without the sisters was a constant reminder of loss, it was also a story of perseverance. The family had survived uncertainty, heartbreak, and endless waiting. They had adapted to a world without the sisters, yet never forgotten them. Every day was a tribute to what had been lost, and every moment of survival was a testament to their enduring hope that one day, the mystery would finally be solved, and the sisters' fate would be revealed. 16 years had passed since the sisters vanished. The family had grown older. The children who remained had matured into young adults, and yet the house still carried the same quiet tension, the same lingering hope that one day the mystery would be solved. The world had changed around them. Technology had advanced, memories had faded slightly with time, but the family's longing had not. They lived every day with a mixture of grief, hope, and the quiet ache of unanswered questions. Then, one ordinary morning, everything changed. A phone call came that would shake the family to their core. It was the police calling with new information from a cold case review. Technology had improved and old evidence had been re-examined. DNA testing, once slow and limited, had progressed. A trace from the sisters' last known location had been matched to a new discovery in a neighboring town. The family's hearts raced with hope, fear, and disbelief all at once. They were asked to come to the police station immediately. Driving there, their hands trembled. Every traffic light, every passing car felt heavy with expectation. They didn't speak, but in the silence they shared the same unspoken question. Could this really be the moment they had been waiting for 16 long years? At the station, detectives laid out the evidence. It was both shocking and painful. The sisters had been found, alive, in a place the family had never imagined. They had been taken shortly after their disappearance by someone they knew, someone who had hidden them away for all those years. The detectives explained that it had been a situation of control and fear, not harm. The sisters had survived, but their lives had been completely separate from the world they once knew. The family struggled to comprehend the truth. 16 years of absence, of uncertainty, of grief, had suddenly collapsed into a single moment of revelation. They had imagined so many scenarios, some terrifying, some heartbreaking, but none had prepared them for this. The thought that the sisters had been alive all these years, so close yet unreachable, was almost too much to bear. The detectives then explained how the sisters had survived. They had been forced into hiding, moved from place to place, protected and controlled by someone who had a twisted sense of authority over them. Yet through it all, they had survived. They had grown up in circumstances they could never have imagined, adapting to a life of secrecy and fear, but always holding on to the hope that one day they might return to their family. The family's emotions were overwhelming. The mother wept openly, clutching a handkerchief, while the father stood frozen, tears welling in his eyes. They could hardly believe the sisters had been alive all this time, that each birthday, each holiday, each small celebration had passed without them. Yet they had endured. The weight of those lost years pressed down on them, heavy but now mixed with relief and the faint spark of joy. Arrangements were made for the reunion. The family drove to the location where the sisters were being cared for by authorities. Every mile felt both infinite and instantaneous. The closer they got, the more their anticipation grew until finally they arrived. And then there they were, older, different, but unmistakably the sisters they had loved. The reunion was raw and emotional. Tears, laughter, and trembling hands met in a flood of feeling that words could never fully capture. They held each other tightly, afraid to let go, afraid that even this moment could somehow slip away. The sisters were overwhelmed, struggling to process the world they had missed, the family they had longed for, and the life they had lost. Yet in that embrace, time seemed to stand still, and for a moment, 16 years of pain and uncertainty melted into the warmth of connection. Over the next few days, the family learned more about what had happened. The sisters shared stories of their years in hiding, how they adapted, survived, and found small ways to keep hope alive. They spoke of fear, but also of resilience, courage, and the deep desire to return home one day. Every story was a mixture of horror and strength, a testament to human endurance and the will to survive against unimaginable odds. The parents listened, holding back tears, feeling both sorrow and pride. Sorrow for the years that had been stolen, and pride for the strength and courage their daughters had shown. They realized that the sisters were not the same children who had run down the trail 16 years ago. They had been shaped by years of struggle. Yet the essence of who they were, the laughter, the love, the bond, remained intact. The community that had supported the family for so long also played a role in the healing. Friends and neighbors offered help, shared in the joy of reunion, and helped the family navigate the sudden shift from grief to relief. Local media covered the story carefully, focusing on the emotional reunion and the incredible resilience of the sisters and their family. The story of their disappearance, once a cautionary tale, became a story of survival, hope, and the enduring strength of familial love. The sisters also had to adjust. 16 years had separated them from the world they once knew. They had missed school, friends, milestones, and countless small moments that make life ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. They learned slowly, with the support of family, about how the world had changed. Phones, computers, and even simple cultural references were unfamiliar. Yet they adapted quickly, fueled by love, trust, and the desire to reclaim the life they had lost. Therapy and counseling became an essential part of their reintegration. The family learned together, supporting each other while navigating the complex emotions of joy, guilt, anger, and relief. Each step was deliberate, careful, and grounded in love. Slowly, the sisters began to find a place in their family again, learning to trust, to laugh, and to live without the constant fear that had defined so many years of their lives. During this time, the family also reflected on the past. They acknowledged the pain, the years of grief, and the uncertainty that had marked their lives, yet they also recognized the resilience that had allowed them to survive those years, to keep hope alive, and to be ready for the moment of reunion. They understood that while the past could never be changed, It had shaped them into a family capable of profound love, understanding, and patience. The revelation brought both closure and new beginnings. The sisters' return closed the chapter of mystery and uncertainty that had hung over the family for 16 years. At the same time, it opened a new chapter of rebuilding, healing, and reconnecting. Every moment together was precious, every conversation an opportunity to reclaim lost time, and every shared experience a step toward normalcy. Even as they rebuilt their lives, the family never forgot the lessons learned during those 16 years. They cherished every small moment, understood the value of hope, and carried gratitude in their hearts for the survival and return of the sisters. The story of their disappearance became a story not just of loss, but of resilience, of endurance, and of the unbreakable bonds of family love. And while the pain of lost years could never fully disappear, it was balanced by the joy of reunion, the miracle of survival, and the promise of a future together. The sisters, once gone, were finally home. Life after the reunion was not easy, but it was filled with hope. The sisters had returned, but 16 years had changed everyone. The family had grown older, the remaining siblings had lived through years of uncertainty, and even the sisters themselves had been shaped by experiences far beyond what anyone could imagine. Yet, despite the challenges, there was a sense of relief that nothing could take away. The family was whole again, and that alone felt like a miracle. The first weeks were overwhelming. Every small task became a reminder of how much time had been lost. Mealtimes were chaotic but filled with laughter, as the sisters rediscovered favorite foods, new tastes, and old traditions. They laughed at stories of childhood memories they had missed, shared experiences from their time away, and slowly began to reconnect with the rhythms of daily life. There was awkwardness at times, moments when the sisters realized how much the world had changed, but these were accompanied by warmth, curiosity, and genuine joy. Counseling became an essential part of life. The sisters worked with therapists to process the years they had spent away from their family, to understand the fear and control they had endured, and to rebuild trust. The parents and siblings joined in, learning how to support them, how to respond to emotional triggers, and how to create an environment of safety and understanding. These sessions were sometimes difficult, filled with tears and frustration, but they were also deeply healing. Each conversation, each shared memory, each small victory became a step toward a new normal. Outside the home, life slowly resumed. Friends and neighbors who had supported the family for years came to meet the sisters again. Some were in awe, some in disbelief, but all shared in the joy of reunion. The sisters reconnected with old friends where possible, though some had grown up and moved away. New friendships began to form, filled with curiosity, kindness, and understanding. The community that had held the family during years of uncertainty now celebrated with them, reinforcing the bonds that had never been broken despite the long absence. The sisters also had to adjust to the changes in the world. Technology had advanced, culture had shifted, and everyday life felt different from what they remembered. They learned to use smartphones, computers, and social media. They explored new hobbies, attended school and community programs, and slowly built confidence in navigating a world that had moved on without them. Every small achievement, whether learning a new skill or simply walking through a busy street, became a milestone. The family celebrated each of these steps, understanding that growth after trauma is gradual, delicate, and deeply significant. At home, routines began to form again. Morning runs, once shared before the disappearance, became a way for the sisters to reconnect with their past. The parents joined when they could, sometimes walking, sometimes jogging, enjoying the rhythm of movement and the sense of freedom it brought. Evenings were filled with shared meals, quiet conversations, and moments of reflection. Each day was a mixture of the ordinary and the extraordinary, the small acts of family life now carrying the weight of history, memory, and hope. The family also took time to honor the years that had been lost. They planted trees along the trail where the sisters had disappeared, creating a living memorial to resilience and survival. They organized small gatherings with close friends and neighbors, sharing stories, photos, and memories of the sisters' childhood. These acts were not just about remembrance, but also about reclaiming time that had been stolen and creating a space for healing and growth. School and work became part of the sisters' reintegration. They pursued education, explored careers, and engaged in community service. They found ways to help others, sharing their story with those who had experienced loss or trauma. Their journey became a source of inspiration, showing that even after years of uncertainty and fear, life could be rebuilt, dreams could be pursued, and hope could endure. The family also learned to navigate the emotional complexities of the reunion. Moments of joy were sometimes accompanied by tears for the lost years. Frustration or anger arose when memories of past hardships resurfaced. Yet these moments were tempered by love, understanding, and the knowledge that the sisters were finally safe. Through it all, the family leaned on each other, supporting one another through emotional highs and lows, and discovering the depth of their resilience and connection. The community remained an important part of the healing process. Friends, neighbors, and local organizations continued to offer support, whether through small gestures, shared experiences, or simply listening. The sisters' story became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest times, there is a possibility of reunion, recovery, and rebuilding. Anniversaries and birthdays, once painful reminders of absence, now became celebrations of life, reunion, and growth. The family marked these occasions with joy and reflection, honoring the past while embracing the present. Each small act of celebration, whether lighting candles, sharing stories, or enjoying favorite foods, became a testament to survival, love, and the possibility of moving forward. Over time, the sisters found their place in the family again. They became part of daily life, sharing responsibilities, joys, and challenges. They reconnected with siblings, forming bonds that had been delayed but not lost. The parents, though older and marked by years of worry, found renewed purpose in guiding, supporting, and loving their daughters. The home, once filled with quiet tension, became vibrant again, alive with laughter, conversation, and the small, ordinary moments that make life meaningful. The sisters also learned the value of small joys. Simple activities like cooking together, walking in the park, or watching a favorite show became profound experiences. They discovered that healing does not mean forgetting, but finding ways to live fully while honoring the past. Each day was a step toward wholeness, a gradual rebuilding of trust, confidence, and connection. The family's journey was not just about reunion, but about growth. They learned to embrace vulnerability, to express emotions openly, and to support each other through challenges. They discovered that trauma could be transformed into strength, and that love, patience, and understanding could guide them toward a future filled with hope. Over the months and years that followed, life stabilized. The sisters graduated, pursued careers, made friends, and even traveled. They experienced moments of independence, exploration, and self-discovery, supported by a family that had endured hardship and come through it stronger. The parents found peace in knowing their daughters were safe and thriving, and the siblings discovered the joy of having their family complete once more. Through it all, the lessons of the past remained present. The family never forgot the years of uncertainty, the long nights of worry, or the constant hope that had carried them through. They honored the memory of those years by living fully, loving deeply, and cherishing every moment together. The pain of the past became a foundation for resilience, empathy, and gratitude. In the end, the family discovered that healing is not a single event, but a lifelong journey. It is made up of small acts of love, patience, understanding, and connection. The sisters' return was not just the end of a mystery. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by joy, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Though the past could never be erased, the future was theirs to shape. Together, they laughed, cried, and celebrated life, knowing that even after years of uncertainty and fear, love had endured, hope had survived, and the family had finally found peace.